Behold, the irony unfolding in the heart of Tel Aviv. 1,500 people took to the streets in the name of peace, only to be met with a crackdown by their own authorities. A regime that claims to be democratic is now silencing criticism under the pretext of a state of emergency. But the world is not standing idly by, while Netanyahu tries to rule with an iron fist at home, in Europe. His image is being burned along with the effigies, set ablaze in public spaces, pressured from within, ostracized from without. The government speaks of unity, but the reality is a rift that grows ever wider. If you think this is the peak, you're sorely mistaken. We move on to part 4, internal crisis and global isolation. Internal political crisis. The current political crisis in Israel is no longer merely a routine dynamic between the government and the opposition. One of the strongest voices comes from opposition leader Yair Lapid, who has called this situation the greatest political disaster in Israel's history. This statement is not without reason. In the conflict with Iran, many within the country feel that Israel has actually lost control over its own strategic direction. There is even a sense that critical decisions regarding national security are not entirely in the hands of the Israeli government. This situation has the public asking, what has actually been achieved? Amid this confusion, Israel's move to expand military operations into Lebanon has only added to the controversy. However, this speculation has become increasingly sensitive as it directly intersects with the legal pressure currently facing Netanyahu. As is well known, he is currently undergoing legal proceedings on charges of corruption, fraud, and breach of trust in several major cases that have been ongoing since 2020. And now, the pressure is becoming increasingly real. Netanyahu's criminal trial is scheduled to resume, and many believe that the dynamics of the war could actually influence the direction of this case. There have even been sharp statements from regional officials suggesting that if a broad ceasefire were to occur, including in Lebanon, the legal proceedings against Netanyahu could move more swiftly, potentially paving the way for his arrest. On the other hand, domestic tensions have also been fueled by controversial domestic policies. Judicial reform has once again become a hot-button issue. Many citizens view it as an attempt to weaken the system of checks and balances, which has long been one of the pillars of Israeli democracy. Not only that, but the issue of mandatory military service has also sparked a new wave of protests. Certain communities, including ultra-Orthodox groups, reject policies requiring them to participate in military service. Road blockades, clashes with authorities, and arrests have occurred in various locations. Ultimately, all of this boils down to one thing: Israeli society is currently deeply divided. Military crisis. If the political crisis mentioned earlier was already quite unsettling, the situation in the military sector reveals even more tangible and far more dangerous pressures in the short term. Behind the scenes, there are serious warnings coming from within the military itself. The Chief of Staff of the Israeli Armed Forces reportedly even raised 10 red flags during a cabinet meeting. This is no ordinary warning. It is an emergency signal. He stated that if this situation continues, the Israeli military risks collapsing from within. The main problem lies in one crucial issue: a shortage of personnel. Currently, Israel is facing wars on multiple fronts simultaneously: Gaza, Lebanon, and tensions with Iran. Yet, the number of soldiers has not increased significantly. This means the military is not only facing external enemies, but must also expend considerable effort to maintain internal stability. On the other hand, an equally serious issue is air defense. Recent reports indicate that stockpiles of interceptor missiles have dwindled to an alarming level. Some say they're down to single digits. The impact is immediate. The military must now begin choosing which attacks to intercept and which to let fall. This is a major shift. From previously being able to repel nearly all threats, they must now calculate the risks with every attack. And their adversaries seem to have identified this vulnerability. Attacks by Iran and its allies, including Hezbollah, are now becoming increasingly complex. They are not only launching direct attacks, but also employing strategies to wear down Israel's defenses. The initial waves use older missiles to provoke a response, followed by more sophisticated attacks once interceptor stocks begin to run low. In the north, Hezbollah is also ramping up the pressure. Their attacks are no longer sporadic, but are more coordinated and daring. They are even openly challenging Israeli forces to engage in direct combat, demonstrating growing confidence. All of this creates an extremely dire situation. A fatigued military, understaffed, and running out of resources at a time when the threat is becoming increasingly complex. And when military pressure like this collides with a domestic political crisis, the impact can be magnified. International isolation and global tensions. While Israel faces political and military pressure domestically, the situation on the global stage is no less tense indeed. It could be said to be further restricting its room to maneuver. Let's start with the reactions of other nations. Criticism of Israel's military operations, particularly in Lebanon, is growing increasingly open and strident. Pakistan and France, for instance, have directly voiced concerns over the ceasefire violations occurring. France even emphasized that if a peace agreement is to be reached, Lebanon must be included in it, not excluded. Pressure is also mounting from Europe. The Spanish Prime Minister firmly stated that Europe cannot allow Israel to do in Lebanon what is happening in Gaza. This statement is not merely routine diplomatic criticism, but a signal that European nations' patience is running out. Turkey has also spoken out strongly. Its foreign minister accused the conflict of no longer being confined to Gaza but having spread to Lebanon. He even warned that as long as this expansion continues, peace in the Middle East will become increasingly difficult to achieve. However, what makes this situation even more sensitive is not just official government statements, but also the global public reaction. In Spain, a public celebration turned into a symbol of protest when a Netanyahu effigy was blown up in front of hundreds of people. There was even a live television broadcast showing openly derogatory gestures. This is no longer diplomatic criticism. It has entered the symbolic realm, reflecting public outrage. In Ireland, protests have also grown bolder. One activist even dared to enter an airport and damage a military aircraft as a form of protest against the ongoing conflict. This demonstrates that the issue is not confined to the government level, but has permeated the very fabric of civil society across various nations. And above all, there is a far more serious pressure: the international legal framework. The UN has openly condemned the massive attacks in Lebanon that have caused civilian casualties and infrastructure damage. The humanitarian situation is said to be worsening, with hospitals overwhelmed and access to aid increasingly limited. Meanwhile, at the International Criminal Court (ICC), pressure on Israel shows no signs of letting up. In fact, it is growing stronger. Israel's attempts to halt the investigation into alleged war crimes have been rejected. This means that the legal proceedings are continuing, and the arrest warrant for Netanyahu remains in effect. At the International Court of Justice (ICJ), an increasing number of countries are joining the lawsuit against Israel regarding alleged violations of international law. This indicates that this issue has become a global concern, not merely a regional conflict. When viewed as a whole, this represents a form of isolation that is slowly but surely becoming more pronounced. From diplomatic pressure, public pressure, to legal pressure ISX, all coming at once. Three-pronged crisis, a critical juncture for Israel's future. Ultimately, Israel now faces a three-pronged crisis: a politically divided nation, a military showing signs of fatigue, and mounting global pressure that is increasingly isolating the country. These three factors exacerbate one another. Political decisions fuel military pressure. Military conflicts deepen international criticism, and global isolation narrows the scope for solutions. In the short term, instability could escalate further, ranging from protests to uncertainty over the direction of the war. In the long term, what is at stake is not only the government's power, but also public trust and Israel's standing in the world. The question now is, can this be reversed, or will it become a permanent turning point?